biggest ongoing myth or misconception about crypto that you still see in the day-to-day, or the one thing you wish you could change people's minds about?
Well, I think the major conception is that crypto is a scam. 93% of the world who don't actually have any knowledge about crypto, they stay well clear, because typically the places where you see crypto are things like ads that are associated with like gambling. And so I think people associate crypto with scams in general if they're not in the space. But that's why we started EasyA, which is a place to learn about crypto and actually a place to really figure out what is actually going on behind the scenes so they realize it's not a scam.
Welcome back to another episode of Crypto Explained. I'm your crypto confidence coach, Allie, and I'm joined today in the studio by two very special guests. But before I introduce them, let's quickly set up this episode. So behind every wallet, payment app, NFT, or crypto game is something pretty simple: software written by real people. And when that software runs on a blockchain instead of on a traditional server, that's what people mean when they say they're building on chain. So while it kind of sounds maybe a little intimidating or confusing at first, the reality is that more people than ever are learning how to build on blockchain networks. And I'm not just talking about engineers. I'm talking about students, designers, founders, and even just crypto-curious people like us who have ideas and want to bring them to life. So to help us break this down in a practical and human way, we are joined today by Phil and Dom Kwok, the co-founders of EasyA. EasyA is a learn-by-doing platform that teaches people how to build on blockchain through hands-on challenges, real code, and real projects. Instead of starting with long documents or complicated theory, EasyA helps people go from zero to building directly on their phone across leading blockchains like Solana, the XRP Ledger, and more. Their developers have gone on to build projects backed by top investors, and EasyA also hosts hackathons and demo days all around the world to help builders launch in real life. Dom and Phil have spent years focused on making education so accessible so that so many more people can actually participate instead of just watching on the sidelines. So today we're going to talk about what building on blockchain really means, how it's different from traditional software development, how much you really need to know about coding, and how someone with an idea can take their first step. Dom, Phil, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here with you, Ali.
Amazing. Well, I know we've gotten to connect at, I think, a few different conferences. We had the chance to collaborate on some content for the NCA's website as well as for EasyA. So thank you so much for that.
Definitely. No, we love the work you guys have been doing, with the NCA and everything that you've been doing to promote blockchain, make it accessible. So
let's kind of take many, many steps back and start at the very beginning. I would love to understand, how did you guys first even get into crypto? Do you even remember the first time you heard about crypto?
I definitely do. And I think Dom would have heard about it from me.
Okay.
So I remember I was 16 years old. I was at school and we grew up in London in the UK. So everybody, when they're 16 years old in the UK, if you're British, these 4 letters that you have to study for. It's called GCSEs. So these are the General Certificate of Secondary Education. And I was meant to be revising for those. It was about the spring of 2013. And I was in the school computer gallery and I stumbled across this thing called the Bitcoin white paper. And I started reading about it and I was just absolutely fascinated. It wasn't super, super difficult to read. At least the first couple of paragraphs were like absolutely enrapturing. And I went back home that evening and I locked myself in my parents' basement and I was just like learning everything that I could about it. I started mining the stuff, and then I think I would have told you as well about it. And then I think a lot of the family was like, they were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you spending all this time in the basement? You should be revising for your exams. But that was how we originally got into it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Dom, what was your reaction? Do you remember when Phil first brought it up? Were you skeptical? Were you immediately on board?
Yeah, I mean, I think, whenever anyone really first hears about, decentralized stuff and, Bitcoin and all of these different things and, internet currencies, everyone's always a bit skeptical, especially if you're used to having fiat and actually interacting with things on a daily basis, using either a credit card, Apple Pay. In those days, I think we didn't even have Apple Pay. But yeah, things are always sort of, very foreign when they're first introduced. And I think, for us and for me in particular, it was something super exciting that we wanted to dive more into, especially in those days when it was, very novel. I think nowadays, a lot of people know about crypto. They kind of are a bit more bought into the idea than it was, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago when it was all getting started. And, Bitcoin itself was only a couple of dollars and, things were really nascent. It was sort of like a very fringe thing to be doing. Whereas now it's a lot more mainstream. So yeah, definitely a little bit, curious, a little bit sort of, I wouldn't say hesitant, but a bit sort of, eager to find out what was going on. And so, Phil obviously taught me about it. And I think, from there, we really sort of, really dove into it in a much more sort of in-depth way and started learning about it. And then obviously, the rest is history.
I love that. And I love the work you guys are doing with EasyA, which we'll get into in a second. But since EasyA did not exist when you were first learning about this, where did you turn to learn?
Great question. The first place was literally the Bitcoin white paper. So that was how I originally found out about it and chatted with so many people in the space later on and over the past couple of years. And that was where they originally started. So for anybody who's just getting started, highly recommend Bitcoin white paper. And even if you look back to the other projects that were started, pretty much everything is basically footnotes to that white paper, right? Like even the XRP ledger, there were also quite a few YouTubers at the time. The only problem was that they were getting banned from YouTube all the time. So it's this weird kind of thing. You would watch somebody, subscribe to them, really enjoy their content, and you'd log on the next day and their account would just be gone. And then you'd have to try and find, okay, where's this guy? Where's he popped up? What's his new channel? And then you try and go on like some other forum and they'll be like, okay, he's actually here. He's popped up here now. But it wasn't that easy. So yeah, that obviously later down the line led us to create EasyA.
That's such an interesting point. As you're sharing that, I'm thinking back to all of these little examples of similar hurdles that we've encountered even more recently at the National Cryptocurrency Association when we were setting up our social media channels because we had crypto and cryptocurrency in the name of our organization. Some social media platforms would not accept our handles. And I'm talking a year or two ago where the landscape has really dramatically changed, but there is still a little bit of that like historical hang up of the perception, I will say, and the skepticism that crypto is almost a dirty word.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird because I'd say right now, I mean, there's AI and there's crypto. And these are the two dominant technologies, but nobody is going and saying, oh, you can't post about AI on YouTube or you can't post about AI on Twitter. It's like, okay, AI, it's kind of scary. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. It's developing so fast and there's a lot of dangerous things that people are doing with it as well. Then it comes to crypto and it's like, okay, no, crypto, we're just banning it. Like there's dangerous stuff that people can do. But fundamentally, they're both technologies. They're very, very powerful ones, but it's just completely polar opposite treatments of it. And it's become very, very politicized in a way that AI hasn't really become so. So yeah, I think that it's interesting that you still had that experience. Like, I mean, this would have been like a decade on from when we first started.
Yeah, and I think that's why education is so important. Telling people what the actual use cases are versus just sort of the gambling instincts that a lot of people have when they look at crypto and they look at all these tokens that have gone up by so much. I think showing people that there's actually real reason to be building on the blockchain, a real reason to actually be, holding some of these tokens, that's really where we start to actually get crypto to a place where it's really respected in the mainstream and it's not something that is sort of, seen as like a dark topic by many.
Totally. I like you called it fringe earlier. I think that's such a good way to put it. It's sort of on the outside periphery. And I think the concept of blockchain and cryptocurrency started from a place of let's break down barriers and give access to everyone anywhere. And now all of the hype and sort of jargon and infighting around it has almost started to make it feel like more of an exclusionary space. And that's why I'm so glad to be having you guys here and talking about the work that we're all doing. I'm glad you brought up use cases because that's another part of your origin story I'd love to dig into, or I guess less your origin and more your present and sort of the journey of that. How does crypto show up for you in your daily life? I get in your professional lives, of course, but in your personal lives, I think the utility of the technology has transformed so much in 10 years. So I'm curious, are you actively trading? Have you paid for anything with crypto? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, number one, trading is a huge thing. For me, I think, I've always been interested in finance. I used to work at Blackstone, studied finance as well at Wharton as an undergrad. And I think, over the last sort of couple of years, I've really been interested in the crypto markets and obviously, how those interface with TradFi and with financial markets as well. Being in the financial markets and sort of, really following that from an early age kind of gave me a good feel for how things work and how things actually sort of ultimately come to fruition in terms of P&L and how those translate into actual making money. And I think in the crypto space, a lot of those dynamics are still very nascent in terms of trading. Markets are less efficient in the crypto space. When you look at cryptocurrencies, a lot of them aren't really, or at least people don't really know how to value them. People don't understand, how actually is this token worth this amount? And I think whereas in the financial markets, that's all very sort of well thought out, and there are frameworks for doing that, whether it's, discounted cash flow models, those sorts of things. In crypto, everyone's still figuring it out. But I think, yeah, definitely, trading is a huge potential, is a current huge use case already, obviously. But also, going forwards, the different blockchains can be used actually to make trading much more efficient as well. So not only in terms of actually trading the tokens, but actually increasing settlement speeds, making sure, for example, that trading is available 24/7, which is a huge one. We saw the New York Stock Exchange just announced that they are allowing people to trade 24/7 as well on the blockchain, which is going to be huge. Also beyond trading and financial markets, also in terms of actually transferring value from one person to another. You see with stablecoins, people can transfer value from, let's say, the US, where we are right now, to developing countries very easily, which otherwise isn't possible with a traditional bank. It's very hard if you don't have a bank account to receive money, as opposed to with stablecoins, anyone can send them on the blockchains like the XRP Ledger, Ethereum, etc. So those are all really tangible use cases that I think we're just scratching the surface off, and obviously just fun stuff too, like meme coins and different speculative assets that are sort of almost akin to entertainment in the traditional world outside of crypto. So yeah, I think trading, financial markets, also stable coins, transferring value across borders is all huge use cases for people both in the US and also globally.
Yeah.
I think to come to my personally how I've looked at it and how I've used crypto, when I first got started in it, I was like, okay, this is really cool. In the white paper, it talks about peer-to-peer electronic cash, and that's amazing, really, really cool. And I just started dabbling in it, and then after I was like, okay, actually, it's quite hard to mine Bitcoin. I was using my parents' electricity. I didn't really want to completely blow their electricity bill. I was like, well, all this energy is kind of being wasted. What if we could use that to do real cool stuff? And then I remember around 2016, 2017, I was doing my undergrad at Cambridge in the UK. And one of the other engineers, he was like, have you heard about this thing called smart contracts? And then I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And I was also, of course, reading law at the time. And I was thinking, oh, well, there's smart contracts, there's real contracts as well. We can use these to be self-executing. And flash forwards to today, in terms of EasyA, what we use crypto for, there's payments, there's also treasury, balance sheet, assets. And of course, at the same time, there's also just great ways of showcasing your support for particular communities as well, by either holding a particular asset, or even there's things like NFTs, which can just show your affiliation with a particular thing. So I think there's like no necessarily one size fits all. There's tons of different use cases and tons of different ways that I learned about it on my story. Like I'm just thinking about, okay, bit of, came at it from a philosophical angle originally, then there was a bit of entertainment, then there was a bit of like real use cases, and then like, flash forward today, of course, like more real use cases, practical use within the business too.
I have so many follow-up questions for you guys about all of that. That is, I love that you brought up smart contracts. We actually just recorded a podcast episode all about that. So listeners, if you missed it, this is a great time to go and check it out. But for those of you who haven't heard it, help us understand, as simple as you can, what is a smart contract?
Great question. So I'll flash back to how I originally learned about them, which is, I think, just the best way to think about it. If you think about in the real world, you have contracts. And so everybody's familiar with the contract that they would sign. It's, okay, we're in a podcast studio right now, and you say to the podcast studio owner, I want to rent your podcast studio for an hour or so, and I will pay you X amount. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, it's $1,000. So I'll pay you $1,000 for an hour. You have two parties. So you have two contracting people, and you'll say to them, okay, I'm going to give you this amount in return for this, right? In the real world, what happens is that as long as everything goes fine, that's great. But what happens if things go wrong? What happens if this podcast studio turns out not to exist? Or what happens if they've only given you half an hour? Then it's really, really difficult to actually enforce that, right? For a typical person, you probably don't have the funds to do that. To take somebody to court over $1,000 is just not worth it. You don't have the time, the effort. You're not going to call the police. So what do you do? And for small size contracts, there's nothing that you really can do, right? So typically, contracts are really only enforced when you have big, large sums at stake. So you have $1 million contracts, $100,000 contracts. When you get to the small scale, you don't really have too much going on there. So what smart contracts allow is, imagine if you had the same contract, obviously things are fine in a happy path, but when things go wrong, the smart contract could say, actually, that $1,000, I'm not releasing it to you, right? As opposed to it being, I've already paid the $1,000 or I've already paid this deposit. And that can all be fully self-executing without there needing to be any need for you to pay any lawyers, pay any courts or anything like that. It's a smart contract, right? It knows exactly what's going on and it can self-execute. And as soon as I heard about that, I was like, wow, the light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, this is crazy. I mean, like the whole world is going to run on these things in the future.
It's interesting. I think with crypto, with blockchain, with DeFi, there's so many terms that are, jargony, acronyms, kind of confusing. Nobody really understands what they mean. And I think that does a disservice to the industry, which is part of what we're all doing, trying to demystify and simplify it. But what's great about smart contracts is it is exactly what it says, right? It is a smart contract. And so I'm with you. I think that it's going to underpin a lot of systems that we don't even know yet.
And so, Dominic, you mentioned actually in the intro, EasyA allows anybody just to learn about smart contracts or about blockchain within the EasyA app. It literally can be done now in a click of a few buttons. You can create your own smart contract, deploy it. With the apps that are available today, you can literally go in and just like start using crypto like that.
Follow-up question, I think, before we really get into EasyA, a little bit more about your origin story. You mentioned you were Bitcoin mining in your parents' basement.
Yep.
How do your parents feel about crypto and your friends and people that are not working with you day to day on blockchain?
Yeah, I could kick it off with our parents. I think when I first got started, they just saw this rig that I was building and they were like, what on earth is going on? What is he doing? Like, why is he wasting all this time? He's like, at the time, it was literally in the basement. Everybody was like, everybody was kind of like anonymous as well. No, people got into crypto because they were kind of like anarchical and they didn't really want to be, just like, it was very different to how it is today, where a lot of people are more public about it. And so my parents were kind of like, he's sitting down there in the basement, putting together all these like wires. And it was literally lots of wires because I had like the other sort of piece of jargon is like a PSU. It's like a power supply unit because you need to hook up all this power and you need to then get it feeding into your rig and make sure it's all running properly and it's not drawing too much power, but getting enough power as well. And so I think originally then they were kind of like, Phil, what on earth are you doing? Like, you stop this. And I was like, nah, it's really cool. Like, it's like Bitcoin. Look, and I literally printed off the white paper and I was like, look at it. It's really cool. And I don't think they ever really read it. Flash forward today, I think, they still, they know more about what we do and they know that it's a real industry and it's not just like, me sitting in my basement anymore. But it's kind of like at the same time, there's a little bit of intrigue around it, right? And they've got the EasyA app. I'm trying to teach them a little bit more about blockchain. But I think ultimately, the way that they really understand it is by actually using it. And I think that one thing that, our father is always getting us to do is like, show me that I can pay with it, right? I think payments is that use case that everybody can just grok and understand. Sort of like when you type into ChatGPT and it can give you back an answer. I think that's like, one of the things that will take that to the next level. It's been about 10 years and I think they've gradually got to know more and more about crypto. But I think it still comes down to like, what's the tangible stuff? And it's like, when, as Dom said, it's like a lot of it is trading, which you can't really touch and feel. A lot of it is like, NFTs, which, so I think it's the way that they really understand is like payments. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you get started in any industry, when you're the sort of, the first percentile to really get sort of stuck in, it's always sort of viewed by people outside that, you're a bit crazy, you're a bit loony. But, a lot of people who follow us as well on Twitter have had the same interactions with people when they first got into Bitcoin, they first got into XRP, and these different cryptocurrencies were either, in the case of Bitcoin, maybe a couple of dollars, in the case of XRP, just fractions of a cent. And people were probably asking them, why were you so, fascinated by it? Why were you so interested in it? And people always have a bit of friction, I think, when they are very early in a space. But ultimately, over time, everyone starts to come on board, and then they actually ask you, oh, how did you get in? What did you see in it? And sort of the tables really turn after, that sort of initial innovation cycle has taken place. So yeah, it's been a very exciting journey.
What is the biggest ongoing myth or misconception about crypto that you still see in the day-to-day, or the one thing you wish you could change people's minds about?
Well, I think the major conception is that crypto is a scam. I think a lot of people see crypto, especially if they're not educated on the space or don't have that sort of initial understanding, which, a lot of our community now do, of course. But if they're sort of, that 93% of the world who don't actually have any knowledge about crypto, they stay well clear, because typically the places where you see crypto are things like, ads that are associated with like gambling, and people who say they can turn your $100 into $1 million overnight. That's typically through some sort of crypto coin or their token that they're promoting. So I think people associate crypto with scams in general if they're not in the space. But that's why we started EasyA, which is a place to learn about crypto and actually a place to really figure out what is actually going on behind the scenes, so they realize it's not a scam.
And I think for me, we just hear a lot whenever we're telling people about it, or we start talking with them just around the dinner table with friends. Like, we catch up with friends who were in law before, were at university together with us, and they're Dom's friends in TradFi, and they just say 4 words. It's like, it's not for me. And it's like, no, but it really is. Like, anybody can use crypto, anybody can learn about it and benefit from this. No, it's not for me. Like, that's not me. I'm not crypto. Like, I think that people don't really understand that it really is a technology. It's like saying the internet's not for me, or AI is not for me. And people still do say that a little bit, like, AI is not for me, I don't really like it. I think everybody's starting to realize that AI just is so helpful, right? And it's like with crypto, it's just a technology. It's just really helpful. It's not like you're going to choose, like, I like Coke, or I don't like Pepsi, and I don't like, that's not for me. It's like, okay, you can say that there, but I think with crypto, you can't say that. It's for you. Like, I think that this year, people are going to see that play out in a massive, massive way. I think stablecoins, one of the best examples of something that can benefit everyone, right? We have just a product that is very much better than the traditional system. You can send a stablecoin anywhere in the world, like, with RLUSD, for example, send that anywhere in the world for literally fractions of a cent. You don't need to pay wire fees. It's also sitting outside of the fractional reserve banking system, so you don't have risk of bank runs. And yes, your money in a bank is insured up to 250K, FDIC insured, but if you have more than 250K, it's gone, right? If the bank goes down. So I think stablecoins are a great example, going to open a lot of people's eyes, and hopefully they'll start saying like, oh, maybe that is for me. And then they'll gradually realize, okay, it's just a cool technology, and actually anybody can get into it. And it's just like, it's not even like getting into it. It's like, it's going to help me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, building off Phil's point, actually, I think it's so important to show people the use cases as opposed to talk about the technology. I think a lot of people in the space who start blockchain companies, they like to talk about the technology. They like to talk about the really in the weeds things that people wouldn't otherwise normally understand or care about. But if you actually show them, oh, these are the use cases, I can actually now send money from myself, if I'm, for example, working in the US, to my family back in Asia or back in Latin America, then they start to see, oh, okay, that's what I can actually do with it. That is why I would actually be interested in the technology and learning more about the space. And I think those use cases are so important. And that's why people start to see, oh, maybe this is for me. It's not something that isn't for me. It's not like, it's like a phone, for example, right? No one says phones aren't for me. People want to have a phone because they can call their family, they can call their friends, they can actually stay in touch with people. They don't care so much about the underlying technology or how it works. No one can actually, really build a phone or program on a computer, most people at least. And so showing them the actual use case is what they can do with that tech is so important. And that's what we've always tried to do. And I think that's what you all are doing at the NCA as well, which is, really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point. We were talking about the payments use case, of course, and I did a podcast with Mai Zabanya, the head of crypto at PayPal, and we were talking about how people get so exactly what you're describing, stuck on the technology. How does this work? This doesn't make sense to me. And we were talking about the fact that I wake up every morning and I open up my phone and I have text messages. How did those text messages get to me? I have emails. How did those emails get to me? I have the weather app. I don't have a weather vane. I'm not a meteorologist, but it's just like normalized, and it's sort of this quiet part of our everyday lives because it's been around for so long, right? And I think that eventually blockchain and crypto will become so ubiquitous, like you said, ChatGPT, that mainstream use case that just makes sense and everybody can see it and feel it and understand the value of it right away. So, without much further ado, let's talk about EasyA. I know I gave a little bit of a preamble, but would love to hear from you guys. How did the idea for EasyA really come about? What's your mission? What are you really focused on?
Yeah, so Phil touched on a bit about the origin story, how he
Mhm.
first got into Bitcoin mining, etc. Then how I sort of, became interested in the space as well many years ago. And I think the whole concept behind the EasyA was really centered around the experience that we had, but then actually transforming that so that anyone could actually learn about crypto in the same way that we did in the very beginning. Obviously, back in those days, it was very hard to learn about Bitcoin. There were maybe a few resources online. Most people weren't talking about it. It wasn't encouraged. It was pretty hard to actually learn about it. And even till this day, before EasyA, there wasn't really one place where you could actually learn about the world's best blockchains. And so we looked around a couple of years ago when Phil was still a lawyer and I was working in finance, and we saw, okay, there are so many smart people in the world building really cool stuff in the blockchain space. So many people building cool crypto projects with real tech, real use cases, but not enough people actually focused on it or really able to learn about what they were doing. And so there was a huge problem in terms of actually access to that knowledge. And then also in terms of them being able to distribute what they were building to the sort of mass market out there who would actually be using and building on their technology. And so for us, we decided to launch EasyA, which is obviously the app where anyone can go and learn about crypto. And now over 1 million people have used EasyA to actually learn about different blockchains like the XRP Ledger, like Solana, like you were mentioning before, and other really cool projects. And ultimately, for us, it was really key to make it super accessible, easy for anyone to understand, and actually get stuck into the tech. And that's why to this day, we have people all the way from high school students to university students at the world's best universities like Harvard, Stanford, etc., all the way to people who have just retired and want to learn about crypto, get into the space, and really actually think about how to make use of the tech.
That's incredible. And especially now hearing a little bit more of your backgrounds, legal background, traditional finance background. So neither one of you was a developer by trade, it sounds like. So help me understand, how does the blockchain technology make it easier for anyone without a developer background to build on chain? Or I guess I should say, is it easier to build on chain than it is compared to building on traditional software servers?
In many respects, yeah. I mean, you know, I have no formal training necessarily in engineering, but I'm an engineer at heart. I started coding when I was a kid, and I actually, well, first started learning Java just a little bit down in Palo Alto at Stanford, and that was like where I had my first course on computer science, and just really first started learning about this how to build. And I remember like we had this book. It was like this really thick book, and it was about how to learn Java. It was like you had to learn with Carol the robot. I'm not sure if you've heard of that or anybody listening. You had to like try and code it so that this robot would move around the screen. And I just found this so hard. I was like trying to move this robot like left on this like graphical user interface. Absolutely impossible. And I think that's the experience that a lot of people have as well with coding. Obviously, we eventually managed to get that past that. Dom and I built the first version of EasyA ourselves, actually. And today, though, when I look back at how much easier things have become, I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. It's like you don't need to like getting Carol the robot to try and move around the screen would take you like 30 seconds because you have AI. And at the same time, the primitives have also just become a lot better. So if you look at on-chain, your question was, is it easier to build on-chain than it is maybe, with something like a Stripe? Maybe like a Stripe is actually pretty easy. It's a couple of lines of code. But if you look at building the really powerful primitives that is going to build the next financial system, it's way easier. So a great example, we are actually about to release like the new set of modules on Oral USD in the EasyA app, so a bit of alpha there. And as I was going through it yesterday, I was like, this is actually pretty insane. Like a few lines of code, and you can use a stablecoin. Today, on chain, you can build that as stablecoins or on basically like, stablecoins are basically just a digital representation of the dollar. So this digital dollar, so much more easily. So like, yeah, I mean, I first started learning to code when I was a kid. Today, like, I can't imagine like the opportunities are just so much bigger and also so much easier to build. So I think, it's a yes to it's easier to build and yes to easier to build on chain too.
That's so interesting. I'm thinking about potentially all of the kids or adults. You mentioned even some
Yeah.
retirees on your
Yeah.
platform who might be curious to build on chain, but they have no idea where to start. Walk me through the steps. What do you think is the first place they should go? And then how do we make it super simple for them to show them like you're going to tackle this one thing at a time and you're going to build these skills and then you're going to continue to elevate and advance and ultimately at the end of the day, like you said, we'll have a whole new organization built on chain.
I think the first place, I mean, it really depends sort of what level of knowledge you're coming at it from.
Yeah.
I think the first place, of course, is the NCA, which is a great place. You know, if you're just looking on the website, looking online and seeing, oh, why would I actually be interested in crypto in the first place? That's a great place to start. Then when you have a bit more knowledge, EasyA is a great place to start, of course. Anyone can download it for free on iOS or Android and actually get stuck into the technicals and really figure out, okay, these are the blockchains that I'm interested in. This is what I want to learn. Maybe this is what I want to build even. Or maybe this is what, my son, for example, is always talking about. And this is what I can understand him talking about now, finally, thanks to EasyA. So I think those are two great places. And then, of course, you can actually go to the individual blockchains websites, learn a bit more about the documentation, and really see, okay, this is how I want to get stuck in on my computer.
Yeah, when you break it down like that, it makes so much sense. And I definitely am eager to pull out my laptop and check this all out. Okay, you mentioned some of the really interesting, I think, people that have been going through your courses. I'd love to hear a little bit more about any specific developments that have come out of it. Any like case studies or anything you're really proud of that you've seen just real normal people taking EasyA's courses and coming out of it with cool products?
Yeah, I mean, we had so many. I mean, over the last couple of years, we've had projects come out of EasyA hackathons that are now valued at over $10 billion. So that's huge.
Wow.
And a ton of other cool projects, but it's amazing to see people really just sort of learn about crypto through EasyA, come to these in-person hackathons and demo days, launch projects that then actually get, millions of dollars in funding and real users. So these are super cool projects. And I think that's really how we grow the space, is through getting really smart, young, talented people in and ultimately showing them this is what you can do, this is what you can build. And then those success stories really filter through the community and encourage more people to come in. And that's why EasyA has been so popular.
And we've got other amazing users as well. We see them on Twitter all the time. Like, so you've got people who are using the EasyA app to learn about crypto, to build their own startups, build a new financial system. There's also people who just want to learn about what this whole new technology is about. And also, especially over the past couple of weeks, a lot of people have been wondering, well, how do I actually use it in order to prepare myself for this new financial system that's coming? So I think it's just cool. Like, when we were first starting EasyA, we just built it for developers, and because we wanted to see people building more and more of these startups and cool stuff, and just show them that technology actually was really easy to use. And now people are like, actually, yeah, I want to just learn about this tech. I want to see what is crypto about. Whether you're whether you're working just in an office job, whether you're retired, or you might be working literally anywhere in the world, or even if you're a student. So like the whole gamut is there.
Yeah, the really cool thing is we see people, obviously, a ton of our users are in the US, but then also a bunch are now starting to appear in Africa, Asia. We have a rapid growing community in Asia, of course. We were just there with Ripple for XRPL Apex and hosted a big hackathon together with them in Singapore. And we had a ton of super cool, super smart people actually getting into crypto with EasyA, coming in person to launch their projects. And I think one of the really cool things is seeing people who wouldn't otherwise be able to learn about crypto through a traditional website because they don't have a laptop, but they have a phone. And so EasyA's really actually democratized the whole learning process for anyone who has a smartphone. And outside the US, a lot of people, for example, in Africa, India, etc., they have smartphones, but they don't have internet. They don't have laptops or desktops, and they can, tap into EasyA. They can tap into all these different blockchains, and that really is how we get mass adoption of different blockchains and different cryptocurrencies, as opposed to some of the more, data-heavy ways of learning, like workshops, YouTube tutorials, which are really only available to people who have high-speed internet and people with laptops. So, Europe, America, and pockets of Asia, etc. But if you go beyond that, it's much harder to actually find those ways to learn, and that's why EasyA has been so popular for people all over the world.
That's incredible. Absolutely mobile first.
Yeah.
This is reminding me of a meme that I just saw of, how do you know that you're millennial? You want to pull out your laptop or your desktop to do things instead of doing it on your phone. And I know I feel very seen, very personally attacked by that because it's true. If I'm making a big purchase, I'm planning a trip, I think my instinct is, again, going back to this is the technology that I grew up with. And I feel I'm more comfortable. It's my safe space. And now we're all on the go,
Yeah.
especially post pandemic. And remote work being such a popular thing. So this is a reminder that I need to get better about using my cell phone instead of feeling like I need to tote my laptop around everywhere I go.
It was one of the
Yeah.
contrarian things that we did in the beginning, actually. We had a lot of people who were asking, they were saying, who's actually going to learn about this stuff on their phone? Like,
Interesting.
Who's going to actually code on their phone? How do you do that? And we just thought, I mean, maybe it's one of the benefits of being out here. Like, this is the way, because everybody has their phone. You never go anywhere without your phone.
Right.
Like, you sleep with it pretty much next to your head. But your computer is like, okay, it's at home most of the time, or it's at your office. You don't walk around with your laptop, like, you're clutching it the whole time. But everybody's like glued to their phones. And for us, it was just natural. We're like, you know what? That is where we need to be. We need to be on the device that people are on all the time. And we built it mobile first. So it wasn't like, obvious from the beginning. A lot of people were like, why are you doing that? Like, nobody's going to do that. And today, like, looking in hindsight, looks obvious.
Yeah, it's important to go to where people spend their most time. And I think a lot of blockchains don't necessarily understand that when they first launch. I think they think, and from speaking to the teams, they think, okay, everyone's at their computer. Everyone really is going to get stuck into the code. Some teams actually don't really place too much emphasis on accessibility. They think, okay, we're building amazing tech and people will come. But actually, sometimes you need to give people the tech that you're working on. And that's where, distribution comes into play, and why the work that I think, NCA and what we're doing is so important is because we are actually trying to get the information out to people as opposed to relying on people to trawl through pages and pages of documentation themselves, which they're really not going to do unless, you're telling them it's going to be something that is really going to change their life today, and maybe they can make $1 million in 2 minutes. But otherwise, it's going to be very hard for people to really trawl through PDFs and figure out, okay, what is this whole blockchain thing? We have to make it super easy. We have to break down the barriers for them. And then once you have that critical mass of people, then that's sort of where they start to tell their friends. And, I'm sure with the NCA, you've seen people organically as well refer other people to your websites, just like we have on with EasyA and, on Twitter every day. People are sharing it. People are showing each other, this is what I just learned. And that's really sort of where we get that flywheel coming. And we're, like Phil said, we're on the cusp of, I think, something really big happening in the crypto space this year, and seeing that mass adoption occurring beyond the early adopters.
I love that. You guys really proved the haters wrong and really walked the walk in terms of meeting people where they are. That's such a common thing we hear companies, brands, marketers say, we're meeting people where they are. You actually did it. And that's actually exactly why we launched the Crypto Explained podcast, because people are turning to podcasts for news more and more than traditional media, than websites, than other sites. And I know you guys are really popular on social media as well. And that's where more than half of Americans are getting their news on social media today. So when it comes to meeting people where they are, it is digital, it is cell phones, it is on the go, and it does have to be, snackable, right? Like this,
Definitely.
It's 2026 now, but we're still kind of in this TikTok era where short attention spans, make it visual, make it digestible, sort of hook me in early, tell me everything I need to know in the first 30 seconds or I'm out.
Yeah.
And so speaking of that, we talked a little bit about EasyA's success stories. I'd love to hear from your perspective, what are the biggest trends for people who are just getting started in terms of where do they sort of lose steam, get intimidated, maybe make some mistakes early on? I'm curious if there are a couple of sort of themes you've seen through your work from all different types of people you've been working with.
It's a great question. I think I can kick it off because we were talking about the modules earlier. And one thing that we have like the best insight into is because we have the modules, we have so much data on people, is in like where they're going through the courses, like where they drop off. We know exactly like, okay, these are the modules where they drop off. And what we see across the board is that jargon. And it is when people start mentioning, okay, like these 3-letter words, 4-letter words, it's like without any explanation, right? And we have made our fair share of mistakes in the beginning where it's like, throwing it out there, assuming that people know even what a smart contract is.
Right.
And what we then started to do was actually, okay, well, we see people dropping off at these particular points. Well, if we mention smart contract, let's just explain it a little bit more. And then we also found actually that some people understood smart contracts better than maybe they understood some other elements as well, because a lot of people were coming from the Ethereum environment and the Ethereum context. And so then we had to explain it in those sorts of terms. So it was about meeting people where they're at, but also I think the core part of it is a big, big, big misconception that a lot of teams who are developing content or people who are trying to bring people into crypto they just try to go tech first. And yes, the tech is super important and is the technology fundamentally, but it's about the why. It is, why on earth should we care about this? And what is it that I can relate to in this? And that's why if you go into the first modules of the EasyA app on the XRP ledger, for example, we don't talk about this code. We don't show you all the code. It's literally where did this all begin and why did it all happen? And we talk about the very first post that Jed Caleb made about XRP and about the XRP ledger and this new system that he was trying to build. And then we talk about, okay, who are these other guys who got involved? We talk about Chris Larson and talk about David Schwartz. And that I think is so important. Whenever I think about something as well, I'm like, okay, who are the people behind it? And why should I learn about it? Why is this real? What makes it real to me? And it's with OpenAI, yes, ChatGPT, the product is great. Nobody talking about the technology, but it's also who's the guy behind it? It's Sam Altman. Or with Tesla, it's Elon Musk. And I believe in where the company is going because I actually think Elon is this visionary who is building these cool cars. And yes, they're cars. But we can look beyond that. He's building stuff like robots as well. And it's that sort of thing that people can just relate to. And I relate to as well, just as being a human. I'm not some AI model that just ingests code and then figures out what's going on. Why should I actually learn about this, be learning about this? Why should I care about this? And that's exactly where people will drop off. It's if they get thrown too much initially and if they don't have their why for why they should be actually learning about it. And once we have that why, then people will trudge through being okay, there's this jargon. I kind of need to know a little bit about it and I'll click on the links and I'll go deeper into it. But it's really only if they have that why.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, people also, when they understand the technology, have much more faith in their investments too. So it's beyond just the developers, and obviously we talk about developers a lot because EasyA primarily is a learning platform for developers to learn about different blockchains. But over the last couple of years, we've had a huge growth in the number of people who are actually retail investors using EasyA to figure out what they actually hold. So, they obviously have different bags of different tokens, and maybe they bought it because they found out about it on Twitter or they heard about X influencer talk about it. But they don't really know why that token exists and what the token's for. A lot of people don't necessarily yet understand that a token isn't necessarily itself meant to be an investment per se. It's actually meant to be used to make transactions on different blockchain networks. And that's why the token exists. It's not a stock per se. But I think without having the understanding about how the actual tech works, it's very hard for someone to actually grasp that concept. And so ultimately, I think with a lot of these different blockchains, the utility component is so important to understand because it also gives you conviction. I always say that conviction comes from understanding the tech. And if you don't have the understanding of the technology, it's hard to have that conviction to weather the bear markets, to actually stay involved in the space in order to reach those market highs that everyone is currently hoping for and dreaming of. But yeah, the understanding of the tech is just so important to most people beyond developers themselves. And a lot of people ask us, EasyA is only for developers, right? But no, it's actually for retail investors. It's for consumers. It's for people who just want to actually understand a bit more about the markets and what the different tokens that are out there do. And there's so much more to it than just being able to program.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you've gotten at this point in a couple different places, but I just want to really hammer it home. The utility, the hands-on learning, the practicality and making it real.
Yeah.
Is that what you see as sort of the biggest aha unlock moment for your audience or even for just skeptics you encounter in your real life?
I definitely do.
Yeah.
It's first of all just putting into perspective that this technology was built by real people who actually had a vision and who really wanted to make change in the world. It's because coming back to Dom's point earlier, so many people, their experience, and you might made this point earlier, their touch point is this person on YouTube saying this token is going to moon to whatever. And it is really about so much more than that. It's about the technology. It's about that's why we're here in the first place. It's why crypto was created as a whole. And so I think that is when people understand that, that's their aha moment. It's okay, this is what it's all about. And to a point as well, I think the education side is super important, and it's also about the products. I think we haven't done a great job in crypto of building products that are easy to use. Even stablecoins, right? It's like stablecoins, once you understand them, very simple. I think that is also obviously a big part of what we're trying to do at EasyA. It's the reason we founded Labs, actually, which is a really, really new part of EasyA, which is going to be building products that will allow people to use these much, much more easily. So I think when I look at it and I look at the aha moment, it's like, yes, we want people to have that aha moment.
It's kind of like you were saying when you use your iPhone. You don't realize what tech is behind it, and you don't really care. You just care that it can do what you want it to do.
Exactly. I was even just thinking my background is in public relations, and I tell people if PR is done right, you don't know that it happened at all, right? It's only these infamous blunders of somebody did or said something they shouldn't have done or said. But if it's just people building relationships, having connections, educating about a company, about a product, using facts and resources, it's all actually super simple. I think that, again, there's this like narrative that crypto is this other thing. And it's not like anything we know, but the reality is it's like a lot of things we already know. I love some of the analogies you guys have provided, and that's something we try to do on the pod a lot as well, is talk about sort of, if you think about meme coins we talked a little bit about earlier, thinking about them as like Pokemon cards. They're digital collectibles. They're a piece of pop culture. You want to be in on the brand or in on the joke, but it's not going to necessarily be a sound long-term investment.
Exactly.
I think crypto is probably the most entertaining part of the market you can really invest in. Stocks are entertaining too, to an extent, if you go for the right ones, maybe high growth tech stocks. Things like, obviously, the game stock short squeeze was super entertaining for a lot of people, and that was almost like, crypto price action in a way. But I think, crypto is definitely so exciting for a lot of people, including us, of course, to be in the space the whole time. And the fact that it's 24/7, meme coins, regular sort of more blue chip crypto tokens, so to speak, you can trade those anytime, anywhere. Anyone can access them, and it's a great, super fun industry to be in.
I think if we zoom out a little bit, I think the reason for that is fundamentally because blockchain is a technology. And a lot of people, it's easy to sort of just lump it in. Okay, meme coins, therefore the rest of crypto is like, it's not serious. It's not a serious industry. Whereas like you look at stocks, and it's just like, because stocks are just one financial instrument, whereas crypto is not a financial instrument, it's a technology. It's just like when you go to AI, you can have a lot of fun with it. You can make funny pictures, funny videos. And then you've got really serious stuff. Like you can write code, right? And you can build real financial, instruments. You can build real technologies. You can code up a $1 million business just from your computer. And I think it's the same in crypto. You have the funny NFTs, you've got the funny meme coins, you've got the serious stuff, you've got the real stable coins, which people all around the world are using to escape hyperinflation and really have real tangible impact. And so just taking a step back for a second, it's because crypto is a technology. And there's all these different touch points, and the mainstream media obviously often likes to just, because they have to dumb it down a little bit, and it has to be a cool story or like a catchy story. But ultimately, it's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I think it's like a phone. Phone can be used to watch memes, funny Instagram videos, but it can also be used to phone if you have a serious emergency and phone ambulance or police. So technology is really up to the user, how it's actually utilized. It's not really about the technology itself, and that's what we see in crypto. And I think as well, off Phil's point, in terms of different people presenting crypto in a different light, I think over the last couple of years, we also saw the mainstream media really be anti-crypto. Obviously, the reasons for which are far beyond what most people would be able to actually see. And I think the whole ethos towards crypto has really changed, and now people are actually starting to become much more open-minded. Hopefully this carries through for many, many years until crypto actually reaches that sort of product market fit, so to speak. But I think, ultimately it's been a sort of pretty, I wouldn't say dark time. There's still been huge innovations, but it's been a very oppressive environment for the whole crypto industry. And now I think just in the last year or two, we've started to see a lot of those veils unlift, and actually the industry start to really find its footing.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've actually been traveling all across the country, meeting real crypto holders, hearing their stories. And I asked them a lot of the same questions that I've asked you. How do your friends and family react when you tell them about this? And people are saying they're judged, they're
Yeah.
laughed at, they're mocked, they're being told it's all just scams. And I think if you think about phones, like you said, AI, the evolution of any technology over time, the railroads, the automobile industry, the internet, when it first comes around, it's this scary thing and it's human nature. It's just basic psychology to fear what we don't understand. And then some people, early adopters, innovators, start to get a little curious and they figure out what they can do with the technology. Then
Yeah.
we start to hear about some of these more like neutral to positive use cases to balance out some of the negative ones. Like it really is kind of a tale as old as time what we're seeing right now. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to get over the hump with this one because I think the narrative, the clickbaity news cycles of crypto's just a scam. It is holding so many normal people back from figuring out how this technology can benefit them personally or professionally.
Definitely. And I think if you look at crypto, one thing we always tell people is you have to put in the work to actually understand it as well. To realize it's not a scam. It's like the gym. The gym, if you pay for the gym but you don't go, technically some people would say it's a scam, right? Because you paid, but you're not getting any fitter.
I'm being
So you
scammed
have
right
to,
now.
yeah. So you have to really put in the work to actually understand it. And that's all about why we started EasyA ultimately. It's, making it easy for people to put in that work so they're encouraged to learn about it and then they don't get left behind because crypto is inevitable at this point. And ultimately it is going to really revolutionize the trillions of dollars that are currently in the financial or TradFi industry, so to speak. And that's all coming on chain.
Yeah. It's interesting. We actually did a survey last year asking people who don't yet hold crypto why. What do you think the number one thing is?
Didn't understand it.
They don't
Yeah.
understand
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
It's like such an obvious
Yeah.
thing. And some people did say that they fear that they missed out already. They've like missed the boat on it. And I like to say there are many boats. The last best time to get involved was maybe 10 years ago, but the next best time is now. And there's been a lot of conversation about with the NCA, are you guys trying to encourage people to use crypto or to invest in crypto? And I say no. We're trying to educate people about what it is, how it works, how real people are using it so they can decide if and how it might fit into their lives. And I think that that's also a really sort of something that's different with how you and like us and NCA and EasyA are approaching this, where it's giving people the tools, the knowledge, the skills to empower them to figure it out. And then they can decide what to do with it versus sort of just saying, it's going to the moon. You have to invest now, get in or it's too late. That like hype cycle that's just deters people.
I agree.
Yeah.
That is so true. And I think also to your point, when a lot of people think, okay, it's too late, or they're being told it's too late, you're coming in and Bitcoin is like at $100,000 or, X crypto is trading at Y value. And look at it, 10 years ago, it was so different. Like when I got in 2013, Bitcoin was about $100 and the crypto industry was like, okay, there were quite a few coins being created, but it was nowhere near where it is today. It was just, a fraction of the size. But back then, I would say the opportunities were actually a lot thinner, more thinly spread. Really, like pretty much the only thing you could do in crypto was what I was doing, which was mining. And then you could also trade it. But that was like kind of all you could do back in 2013. But today, you can buy the stuff, yes, but we also have programmability. And so you can use these things called smart contracts to actually build all sorts of new applications. Yes, you can invest in the stuff, but you can also just use it like the internet in order to build a startup. You can build your own business. You can build a fintech app. And of course, it's just like, cool to learn about the technology too, aside from making money in this space. So I think it's like the opportunities have just changed and people need to understand like it is bigger than it's ever been before because you can do more stuff on it and you can build. So I think, 2026 is like the craziest year. 13 years on from when I got started, almost coming up to the 13th anniversary this year. Just never been a better time to be in the space.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. And I think whenever people say it's too late to get into crypto, it's always good reminding them only 7% of the world actually currently owns crypto.
Wow.
So that's really how early we are. And it can seem by looking at crypto charts that, things are already so high. But just imagine what's going to happen when the next 93% get into crypto. And, maybe it won't be the full 93%, but it's definitely going to be more than 7%, put it that way.
Totally. Yeah, you brought up the sort of everyone has a cell phone or
Yeah.
smartphone now. And this is something that my boss and I talk often about. It wasn't like one day everyone declared smartphones are here, right? It was like slowly over time, over decades. I mean, some of my friends were getting iPhones when we were in high school. And I'm like, what is that? I don't need that. I'm happy with my flip phone. Then I think I graduated to like the BlackBerry in college.
Or
and then-
BBM, that was great.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
everybody had to have that in school.
Exactly. And now it's just, my nieces are teenagers now and they grew up with cell phones
Yeah.
and it is so commonplace. And even just the things they're doing with ChatGPT right now blow my mind. And it's sort of ask it anything and it will do anything for you. And I don't necessarily think that that is where crypto and blockchain are going, but I think the power and the potential and the possibilities like pretty endless. I think in 13 years from now, we're all going to be shocked when we look back at this conversation and listen to this podcast and be like, oh, we were so naive, so young, we had no idea.
It's
Well,
like
I
the
think-
internet. It's like the
Exactly.
internet. Before the dot-com boom, there was a very few number of websites. There were a couple of websites. People were adding .com onto the end of anything. Pets.com, for example. Then that all kind of died down. And then the internet really started to take off and things really started to get built. And now everyone uses the internet. There's so many different websites, endless apps, endless things you can do on the internet. Good things, bad things, fun things, all sorts of things. Whereas on the blockchain, it's going to be pretty much the same in a couple of years.
If people want to learn more about EasyA, where should they go?
The EasyA app, number one, on iOS and Android. Anyone can download it for free. And the EasyA website, of course, easya.io. Of course, you can find us on Twitter. Everyone knows our Twitter handles, Kwok_Phil.
Yeah.
And Dom_Kwok. And EasyA_app.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we're also like super accessible. So if anybody has any questions, like we're always responding to people's comments. Everybody who's watching this who already knows us can attest to that as well. So any questions or just like sharing experiences about how they got in or, what is if they have questions about particular things in crypto, just at us, just tag us, Kwok_Phil or Dom_Kwok, and we're always answering.
Amazing. Yeah, you guys have been such great partners, even for the NCA, as we're launching and figuring out how we can make the most impact and help people. But something that's blown my mind entering the crypto community over the last few years is just how incredibly welcoming and inclusive it is. There is no gatekeeping. People are just happy to share their knowledge, share their resources. I like to joke, I learned the hard way, so you don't have to. And I think you guys are really, again, walking the walk and not just talking the talk in terms of living and breathing what you do every day, being so passionate about it, really looking out for everyday people and not just the sort of niche 1% who might be super coders and developers. So I love how you're taking this, something that seems so complex and making it so simple. So just thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you. You too.
No, thank you. NCA has been amazing as well. And I think, together we will make crypto mainstream.
I think so too. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. I can't wait to have you back on the pod. And thank you all for listening at home. I will catch you next time in another episode of Crypto Explained.